Welcome back to Wake the F Up podcast, where we don't shy away from the truth, where healing starts by telling the whole story, and waking up means reclaiming your voice after life has tried to silence it. Today's guest is someone who embodies the truth with fierce grace. Kat is the founder of Untamed Heroes, a powerful movement that was born from her own journey of survival and radical rebirth. After escaping an abusive and dangerous relationship, left behind 16 years of her life and started all the way over, halfway across the world. Her courage didn't just save her life, it lit the way for countless others to do the same. She now shares resources, tools, and raw personal insight to help survivors reclaim their power, rewrite their stories, and step into the fullest expression of who they are. Welcome to Wake the F Up podcast. Kat, welcome. It is such an honor to have you here on the podcast, and I'm just so happy. Did you want to tell the listeners a little bit about your background, your story, and how you got to be where you are, which is so impactful today?
It's a loaded question, but I will try.
It is.
You feel free to cut me off anytime. I'm originally from Estonia. I moved to America when I was 17. I ended up being in many not good relationships. And I just thought that that's kind of how things are, or that's somewhat normal. And looking back now, in retrospect, I know that they just kept getting worse, right? Like, I'll skip right to the last one. And we were together. We were not married. We were together for probably a year and a little bit when my son was born. By that time, I mean, the domestic violence that I know now, the words for, was there from the beginning. There were, looking back, I see only red flags. When I was in it, I didn't. I did, feel that things were weird, or that, like, why was he checking on my phone, just a couple of weeks in? Why did he check my messages and question me about them? Or when he got really depressive and said that, he doesn't belong here and he should take his life. And when I say that, but just kind of to put it out there, I think that, suicide is a very sad and terrible thing. When we're talking about narcissistic people, we're talking a little bit about manipulation tool that they use. Okay, so, and he started that very early on to really reel me in. He had to know where I was all the time, but he was late constantly when he came to my house or something. And so, but I couldn't really question him. Found a box and he found pictures of me and my ex in there, which, we have lives. It's normal to have stuff, unless you're an abusive person who hides their, past, then you don't have that, like he didn't. And so anyway, that turned into a huge thing. He was so upset. He laid them all out on the like a bathroom vanity or whatever you call it. And I went there, and he was just so mad that I had this ex, and who was a different race as well. So that pissed him off even more. And he held that above my head the whole relationship. And then he pushed me into my closet, and I just fell in there. It escalated more and more, and then I got pregnant. It escalated more and more all the time. The anger episodes, I was walking on eggshells every day. You did not know what was going to happen on a daily basis. I mean, he threatened, he said that if the child is my ex's, if my child is born Black, then he will, unlive all of us. And there was no reason for any of these accusations. By the time I ended up having my baby, my mom had come to America as well to be there at the time. So, of course, I didn't tell her much. I mean, she could pick up on some stuff. My mom left after my son was born. She was there for a couple of weeks after that. And then I think that he thought that then he had me, right? Because I had the baby. I was there. I didn't really have many friends that I hung out with on a daily basis. A couple of them from work that I used to. I would have to always send the picture when I was out. So he knew who I was with and who I talked to and what I talked about. But and so it just kept getting worse, and he was picking fights, and he was threatening me. He was just becoming, I was scared. I was laying there in bed, and for the first time, I felt such fear, like my baby is there, and I was so afraid. I was so afraid of him. And I think that abuse is so, unless you very much have, listen, we don't compare abuse, number one, but unless you have physical things to show right away that, look, I have a black eye, then it's so hard to explain to people what's happening, the psychological, horrible, I lived in absolute fear every second, that's how I felt. And anyway, so escalated to, I think the biggest one, what happened, it was I started recording it because I was so scared that something happens to us and nobody will know or believe me or whatever. And of course, it was a huge risk because he usually would go through my phone and check everything. So I set it recording as I was nursing my baby. So I was on the couch. The phone was like next to me, and he started a fight. And he was going on and on and on. And he had this big water jug. He came and like punched me in the face with it. And on the video, you can actually, because I wasn't I was filming, or I had more sort of voice there, but the way the phone was, that it you can see him by me and looking at me after he does it. And later on, he said that I had moved out of the way, which is not true. And so I was like, okay, well, this is crazy. And so he he threatened to kill himself. He like tied my work computer cord around his neck and laid on the stairs. He really didn't do anything. He just did that. He walked around with a gun in the house, and in Arizona, guns are very much allowed. And so, my friend, by that time, was talking to a friend of mine, Nikki, who I talk about often. She's a longtime social worker, a therapist, EMDR. She does all the things. I mean, she didn't do those things to me, but she just has the experience, right? And she called me and she's like, Katre, if you don't leave, I'm afraid he's going to kill you. And it's like the if somebody has guns at home, the percentage of the homicide, or however it's called, goes up by like 500 or 5,000%. It's a huge number, right? Um, and so yeah, so then we started figuring out what to do. Like, I didn't have a plan. And this is why I'm now sharing and trying to help others, because it would probably help to have some plan. But sometimes you just don't have time for a plan, and you should go, and you should definitely go, even if you don't have a plan. Got to the point where finally I was like, okay, I gotta go. And I had no plan. I left. My cat stayed there. I left to my work, told my boss I'm coming. Don't say anything. Just say that you asked me to come in, because I hadn't started working in the office yet. And I went there, and from there I went to police, and Nikki was on the phone with me the whole time, and that's when we escaped. Ended up going back with police, like, I don't know I forget what it's called now, but they come with you to the house. And I said, he has to leave. I want to go and get my cat. And they're like, oh, he's not going to do anything to him. I'm like, how do you know, bro? Like, you don't know him. And anyway, and then a couple days later, I had Cotton also asked the cops to come again with me, because I wanted to get a few of my things, if possible, before serving him with the order of, gosh, my English is today is flying away, but you know what? Yeah, so he can't come near me. And I had like, I think they give you like, if it was like 10 or 15 minutes to like get your stuff. And I'm like, okay, this is my 16 years of life, right? Like, what do I choose? So we were getting stuff to my friend's aunt's car. And then all of a sudden she's like, there's no more room. And there was like, most of the stuff, I just looked, it stayed on the floor, and I just left. I know they're just things. Listen, like, I'm not comparing. We got out safe and alive, but it is such a weird feeling, right? I mean, everything. So we escaped, and ended up escaping from there to Utah. And then eventually, as our documents were good, we went to Estonia, where I'm from. And then, yeah. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what happened.
One of the things that I like to do with clients in our company is get into the nervous system healing. And I was wondering, like, while you're talking, as a widower, often like we have to replay anniversaries, and like, you know what I mean? The story lives inside your cells of your body. And I was just wondering, when you were telling, like, do you still feel the same fear? Like, how long does it take for you to get back inside of your body and relive some of this, like, memorial, that as you're walking 7 years away from this, it still feels very, very present today? Does it feel like that in your body?
Yeah, good question. I think that I've shared my story quite a few times, and at first I immediately cried, because it was a lot. And so, but in another sense, it's been very therapeutic, right? Because I'm like constantly, it's like I'm in a therapy, right? I'm sharing, I'm talking, I'm getting it out of here. And but yes, whenever I do interviews or podcasts, I do go back in there, because I'm not just giving some random info, right? I'm going into this moment of time, and sometimes I'm remembering maybe additional things. I'm usually, after interviews, I feel a little bit like,
Alive, yeah. Well, I bet it activated too, because I do think it's so interesting, like in trauma and healing, as you know, like the more that we talk about the story or the more that we relive the story through helping others, sometimes it's like a mirror, like a two-way mirror where you're looking at someone else that you're helping in the same scenario, but it almost makes you process it, something that maybe you never saw in your own grief, in your own walk. And that's so crazy, right?
So crazy. And I maybe a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, a friend of mine, actually the girl that he had dated after me, that's a long story, but we became friends. And she sent me an article, a video clip of news. And I was like, okay, what's this? And it's from Arizona. It was from where we were. It was our coach on TV giving an interview about a guy that went to his gym. I didn't know that guy. They must have joined after I left or something. So that guy had a son who was about 8 years old. And he was engaged to this girl who also was working out there. So they were both working out, and she was pregnant. He killed her. He killed himself and his 8-year-old son. And I see my coach speaking that in a freaking interview. And I hadn't been triggered in a while in ways. And all of a sudden I was like, poof. It was so heavy. I was like, I'm watching my life play out if I would have stayed. That is precise. And then I was thinking, yeah, I was thinking back, like, did my coach that moment think back to my story or not? Like going through that.
I'm sure, right? Because I do think sometimes people, they just want everything to be okay. And I think a lot of times when I was coaching the women who are in domestic violence situations, and they were recently out, so they were in the secondary, like temporary housing and getting help. And then the system here locally that I was working with had a cool system. Like they basically would house them and then they would slowly help them get their own housing and kind of get a new job and protect them in this, really cool way. But so they were in various stages along the exit path. And it's challenging. Like a lot of words that come to mind in terms of emotional healing is like the amount of control, manipulation, the narcissism. The theme that I felt like we coached on the most was getting the women to be comfortable to sit inside their body was hard because really the violence is so intense that your mind is almost pressed into none of your own thoughts because they convince you that everything you're doing and saying is wrong and that you're crazy, that they're going to hurt themselves or hurt you or God forbid your children, your animals. And it was really challenging for them to sit inside of themselves, and they needed to connect with themselves in a deeper way and trust themselves in order to get themselves, I think, to healing. And it was really powerful because I think not trusting ourselves might be a theme for so many of us, right? And I think, however, when that's a problem or that's been a familial pattern or something you grew up with, to not be allowed to trust yourself or have space to make mistakes, it can really spiral into bad situation relationships. And yeah, I was just wondering, like, how did you take steps forward? I mean, you had to become a single mom. I mean, God, you moved across the country, which is to a whole nother side of the world. um how was it for you in the escape? Like, I mean, awesome. You made this majorly quick decision with very little plan. You're clearly a badass with a lot of resourcing internally to do that because that's really hard. Talk a little bit about after you left. Like, does it all fall apart after you make the healthy choice to leave?
Leaving was crazy and scary and all the things, right? I mean, every single second until we landed in Estonia, and it didn't end from there. Um, and it was such an interesting time, right? Because I have a newborn. So I'm in this bubble, but then I'm also living in this fear, um, but also wanting to make sure that I'm here for the newborn and not being, being enough as a mom. And so we went to live with my parents, and for a while they have a two-story house, and we would have had upstairs where I, had my childhood room. But for a while, I was like downstairs in next door, next room. I was scared, even though it wasn't realistic fear, right? It wasn't physical. Like there's very small chance that he was just randomly showing up behind the door there, because they're still cowards at the end of the day in another country, usually. And when I'm speaking of narcissists specifically, but I was so scared. I was so scared to sleep. And it's such an interesting thing too. And I think with grief in general, and I'm guessing you can relate to it. It's like I've had this thing happen to me, but everybody else is living on like nothing's happened around you, right? And somehow I'm like having to blend into these events or conversations, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like it was so crazy. And unless somebody has gone through a very similar thing, people try to be there for you. And I don't think everybody is like purposely trying to be there for you in a wrong way, but they don't really know how to do it. So I felt alone, which quite alone, which kind of inspired the whole Untamed Hero thing that I started, right? Because I was like, shit, because like nobody gets it. Like people try and it's not. Um, so it was wild. And then I got back into working out, which for me kind of saved me back in a day. I like to say it, but yes, I made a choice, to do it. But I was like, I need to just get me back. I need to get me back and figure this out. And without a doubt, for me, my son was a huge my why. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can't even like imagine what it would have been like without him if I was just a single, a single woman. But it was what pushed me to like get my stuff together faster, because otherwise I couldn't be there for him. And then in a flip side, I was like, okay, now I get to do everything from scratch, and I'm gonna change.
Well, the mindset is really cool to think about that, right? So, like widows and women who and men who escape domestic violence were forced to, our life is shattered, right? So, in an instant, as you said, you like couldn't even fit your 16 years of life into the vehicle to escape. And I felt, I mean, it's different, right? The fear is the same, that it's all on us. Your whole life is different. I think the victim shaming has got to be really challenging. Widow shaming is like equally shitty, where people are like, well, why would you do that? And don't do that. And you shouldn't do that. And I feel like victim shaming seems like everyone's blaming you for the domestic violence that happened in your home. And it's like, okay, no matter if I had got myself into a bad situation, no one deserves to be physically harmed and threatened all day long. Right. And like they shouldn't be afraid to leave and manipulated and decrease themselves into a small little person that the abuser is trying to make you feel that you are. It's a real mind screw. So I think it's got to be incredibly challenging in that way to resource yourself. But it's really cool to think that in most shatterings, we have to make a choice to live. We have to choose life, and we get to start over, which is really a blessing in some ways, where you're like, all right, this is shitty. I would have never wanted this path. It's forcing me to look inside of myself and heal some of the deeper woundedness that may have contributed to my story to this point. However, and I get to heal. I get to rewrite my story at any moment in time. And so, talk to me a little bit about your healing path. It sounds like working out, which physical movement for me is a huge one too. I think it literally can alleviate 80% of our problems. Like just moving your body, even if it's walking, even if it's moving in the chair, like any sense of movement. Did that start you on your path to resourcing and helping yourself with some self healing?
Absolutely. And listen, I'm not saying fitness is the only thing, it's not, but it moves, motion. We need to be in motion, because otherwise shrivel up. And listen, I was in this position, fetal position enough as well. Not saying that I was just there like throwing barbells up in the air. Second day, I was not. And in fact, for a while at first, it was challenging because I was into CrossFit a lot. I still am, but quite a bit. But I would hear the songs that would remind me of my ex. And I had a hard time in CrossFit gyms because, similar songs play or the same thing. And I was like inside, but then I was like, well, he's not going to get the best of me. Like, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm like, I'm going to figure it out. But fitness was a huge part, because not only am I, getting myself to be healthy inside out, but it also gives you confidence. So it starts giving you confidence. And it's not about the physical looks, is what I'm not talking about. It's not that confidence. That's like a byproduct of putting the work in, right? But you get confidence because you're showing up for yourself. And that gave me like, it just gives you this energy to do all the other things. You're doing this hard thing in the gym, and it just pushes you. And so that was a huge, huge part for me. And then I went to some therapies. I didn't quite find the right thing at at the time, and I could tell even then, because once you go through something, you become, an expert at this topic. So I'm sure you know everything about grief, like all the things. I was like, PhD in narcissism. I knew all the things about it. So when I met people that were therapists or something, and I knew more than them, then I was like, I can't like, and they not. I don't want to say it in a bad way. I didn't knew more than them, but they didn't have quite the knowledge about what narcissism really is. I felt like they couldn't really help me.
I think that can be the case. You know, we say in the show a lot, like, I actually think therapy is crucial, but I think that you have to find the therapist that challenges you, that understands your story and is an expert in what you're dealing with. You know, interestingly enough, my first grief therapist, who I attribute to like saving my entire life and my family life, she did her PhD in Daughters of Narcissists. And so right away, you know, as I'm walking through the cancer and grief path, and this is even before my husband died. So I was mid cancer fight, everything was falling apart around me, trying to hold it all together. And the work that we were doing was the fact that my dad was a narcissist. And that my abandonment issues came from never being good enough and not being able to be in this, you know, you can't breathe the same air as a narcissist. So it's really challenging to be seen, and you migrate yourself to people please and give and give and give, and it can be really mentally taxing, to find yourself when you've been in a relationship or raised by a narcissist. It's really challenging. So I can relate on narcissism. It's a deep part of my story as well. So I think it's incredible that you know, to get away from it, it still can kind of press the mind for quite some time, if not forever.
Yeah, I think thank you for sharing some of your story as well. Healing is just, it's not, there's not like a destination, and things will just come up as we, you know, you just keep peeling the layers and layers, and I think it does stay with you. And it's not that we just make wipe all these wounds or those things away, but we kind of learn the tools to deal with it better. And yeah, you know, our nervous system gets more calmer and better, so we're not constantly on fight or flight, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen again in the future. Not saying that the same situation, but something that pulls you into that fight or flight. But then you have tools and stuff to work through it a little bit better.
What are your favorite tools for working? I mean, you talk about, it's super interesting that you just said music triggered you memories, and that makes sense to me. Like, I think music is a powerful somatic practice, or something that you can hear, a tool that often will connect us to memories and stories. And so when you're getting triggered today, or even in your healing journey before now, what would you say are your favorite tools that you can offer the listeners who might be suffering or just left domestic violence?
And a good thing to do actually is make a list of all these things that you could try. And then when you're in the situation, you're going to pick one thing and try it, you know. But for me, besides working out, because listen, I do want to go and like wallow in bed and be like, ruminate in this madness. Um, but my son inspires me not to do that, because I can't, you know, I need to take care of him and my crazy 11-month-old Labrador puppy. I can't do that. But I've always wanted to be like this person who's like, I journal every day 1,000 pages, and I don't do it. But whenever I do it, it is very freeing. So when I do have a quite the trigger, I go and just write whatever comes out. It's kind of, I think the biggest thing is to get it out. You need whatever is happening out of your body. You do somatic healing, so I'm sure literally what you do, but um, that really is helpful. And breath work. I think that is one of the things that it's come, of course, it's quite known now more, but I still think not everybody uses it, because it had this woo woo thing, like, oh, you're doing the breath work and you're like kumbaya, and it's not. And I had like this thing happen, and I was triggered, and I did this breath work, and it's the 4-7-8, right, where you didn't hold seven. And I did it, and I was like, holy shit, it worked. I was so like, I was coming down, and I was like, who would have known? I can breathe and I can feel better, you know, because we get so tense. I mean, actually, for several years after we escaped, I would notice myself. I would be at the grocery store, and I was like clenching my jaw for no reason. I would just hold it or hold my breath and I started noticing it. I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? You know? And so the breath is just really huge, and it's something we have available. And if you don't know how to do it, which I didn't know, I'm like, okay, deep breath. Yeah, okay, I know how to do that. But there's a bunch of apps and stuff out there that, or free YouTube videos, something that can kind of guide you. I teach like group fitness as well now, and personal training. So in my relax class, I always do the breath work, and I do that for them. I'm like, this is the best.
And what you're talking about in the somatic world, we call this like resiliency routine. So we're expanding our tolerance, right? So the world is never going to be this calm, steady Eddie. And when you had a trauma history, like both of us have, you're going to be pulled so easily. Your body wants to go back, and your mind goes back into what they call the trauma vortex, which I've been talking about this all week. But it's like, that's what you're talking about, like getting in the spiral where you're back in your memories, you're in the past, you're fearful of the future, you're not in the here and the now. And so building resiliency and stretching, the window of tolerance, which is like Deb Dana's work, which it means like the more things that I do, routines that make me resilient. So for her, it's breath work, it's exercise, it's CrossFit, it's any of the modalities that she does that bring her back inside of the here and the now, inside of her body, and allow her trauma to be released in small amounts. And that for some of us, that's walking. For some of us, it's sitting in nature. For some of us, it's boxing. For some of us, it's very different. Music, it's singing, and there's a million creative endeavors, your body in action, motion. And it's crazy when you look at the science behind what's happening in dysregulation. It's our body is receiving messages all the time first before our brain can even compute what those messages are. The body will, "Ooh," and that jaw lock that you got is such a natural fear-based somatic response. You hit sympathetic high sympathetic energy in your body, and your body is like, "Ooh," and I guarantee it was probably, I'm in public. In the past, being in public got you in trouble, right? Like, you were at the grocery store, if you didn't check in and you didn't plan out your whole, day, you were in trouble, and your body is still remembering that story, and these stories stay locked in our nervous system, and the nervous system's job is to keep us safe. That's the only job it has, is to keep us safe. And so in that, your body's like, "Remember when we used to go to the grocery store and it wasn't safe to be out in public?" And it's interesting, like, all of us who have suffered trauma, which, like, I have never met someone yet in my life journey who hasn't experienced trauma. Some people don't like to admit it, but almost all of us, we're not escaping this life without a little bit of trauma, unfortunately. That's really sad. But it's cool to think that you can sit inside of that and say, "Yeah, hey, my jaw is clenching right now. I'm feeling some TMJ. That is my body's first message to me that I am back in a fear pattern, and I just need to breathe for a minute. I need to do some self-massage on my jaw. I need to remind myself, witness that I'm scared. I've been scared in the past in situations like this, and look how far I have come. Look where I am. I can freely grocery shop right this now, and I am safe. I'm safe, body." And it's pretty cool to think that, like, how much you're untangling in every moment 7 years later. It's really amazing what you've been able to accomplish. So let's talk about Untamed Hero. I want to hear about your platform, and I love your podcast, and your social media is incredible. It's got a really powerful. I love branding, and your branding is beautiful. It's like it feels very strong, and maybe just like your workouts, like it feels strong, it feels empowering, it feels like anyone can do anything. When I'm looking at your imagery, the photography is amazing. So I'm just, kudos to you if you're the one creating it solely, or whoever's helping you, 'cause it looks really amazing.
Yeah, Untamed Hero is it was born. It was not intentional birth of Untamed Hero. I just literally started sharing some stuff. I would couple like my own thoughts, and then I was resharing posts because there were such great people sharing really good stuff, and I was like, okay, obviously crediting them, and sharing their stuff. And then for a while, I didn't post anything, and it was kind of whatever. I was not brave enough yet to put my face there because I was scared. I didn't know. It's kind of a process, and I don't think everybody has to go out there and shout their story and show their face. But if you want to, you certainly can. And then I started posting more my own stuff, and reposting and back and forth, and then suddenly started blowing up. It just started catching when, but also back when we left 2018, I didn't start the Untamed Hero. Actually, I don't even know exact date, maybe a year later or so, whatever. The information wasn't as much yet on Instagram as it is now. And so it was like up and coming at that very moment because I was looking for answers. And, I found some in some podcasts and some people who were doing kind of some therapists and people who were sharing stuff online. And then it blew up. And then I got into, I probably over posted for a while. I posted a lot per day. And that's how it grew. It grew because I posted a lot and consistently. Like I have posted now probably every day. If there's a day, I can't remember a day that I've missed. but that was it. It was just me, it was just me posting, reposting, reposting and stuff. And um it's cool, and it's also sad because, yeah, I mean, I post funny like reels and videos that we see, and memes, because like humor also a big part of my healing journey, because I have to do that. For me, it's good. But it's cool. Yeah, and it's cool because there's a lot of people there now, and it's growing still, but it's also sad that so many people relate to these hard things. But then it is cool that we get to talk about those stories, which is, I think, the really good part about social media, because it can be a little bit of a hellhole, obviously, as we all know, but also it can be really good and powerful, because just to not feel, because I mean, I felt so alone in that, and just to have, I've had this for a while. I was doing some calls with people. I said, I'm just a survivor. I can chat and I can just listen to you, because I had nobody to listen to me, really, in that sense. And so it's been really, really nice to kind of find a way to pay forward, because I get it.
You're right too. Community is so important, and I think a big part of survivorship of different emotional problems is that you feel so alone. And I think you're right about social media. It's interesting too. Even in the last year, I've noticed like healing from different traumatic experiences. There's just group after group after group, and maybe even the awareness of what. Sometimes when you're in a situation, you're so isolated, especially in domestic violence scenarios, because I think that's the goal of the abuser, is to isolate the victim. And therefore, like, being able to be on Instagram and be like, hey, that lady's story is a lot like my story, and that's what's happening to me. You hear that a lot, where people read something and they're like, I recognize that someone else is experiencing, I'm not alone. And so do you have a lot of women that reach out, like DM via your social media and say like, hey, I'm in this situation, what do I do? And then I noticed you have a guidebook to getting out of domestic violence. I mean, there's a lot of really cool tools that you have helped women with.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm working on it. Listen, like, it's just me. Now I have a team who's helping me, with the merch store and everything, but it's just been me just figuring it out. But yeah, essentially, I would get a lot of messages, or just messages of somebody recognizing, their story, just like what you said. And I think what's cool about that is that now, when I went down the rabbit hole of narcissism, because I didn't know about it, I had heard the word, but I had no clue. And then it just validates your experience, because you have words for it, right? You're like, this is literally what I like, textbook, boom, 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 I can check all the boxes. So not only are you not alone, but there's words for it. Like, no, I wasn't crazy, I didn't make this up, this happened to me. And so I've spoken to women and some men, but mainly women, from across the world, really. And it's been really cool. And I mean, honestly, sometimes it is just about somebody just being like, I believe you, I understand you, and you don't have to over explain, you don't have to defend anything. Like, I know what you're saying, I believe you 100. I know exactly that. So yeah.
I know it's crazy how powerful witnessing and affirming can be for us as humans. Like, we need that, especially when we're in really traumatic situations. It's really challenging. And I think the brain is in such a powerful state of survival that we often just second guess everything about ourselves, and we don't really know how to be who we are, because there's not enough safety and calm in those scenarios to resource yourself. And so talk to me about the future of Untamed Heroes. Like, what are you hopeful for? Is there anything you're working on that's exciting you right now, and you want to share with the listeners?
Yes. So my podcast, I need to publish it, and then which also I was, you've been a single mom. I was like a single mom. This account is blowing up. I'm also working, and I'm also just by myself with my son. Like, I can't do all of it, and I want to do all of it. It's like I didn't know what to do. So that's coming, and then we had just opened the merch store recently. Uh, as an Untamed Hero stuff. I'm wearing one now. Actually, the shirt that's sale is in the middle, but the point of the store really is that one of the biggest things, and we chatted a little bit before we started recording, but one of the things is really the financial situation that you're in when you leave. A lot of the time, okay, that you need some support and help. And what I'm hoping to do with this merch store specifically is to be able to grow it so that we can start giving back in ways. And I'd like to I don't know where the path takes us exactly, but my goal would be at first to help women who leave, so like single mothers, because I relate to that. But be able to give them that opportunity for whatever assistance that would be, monetary and otherwise, without having to jump through a million hoops to get it, and not having to apply at some, government place and sit in lines and do the things while their inner world is absolutely like they can't even exist. You know what I mean? So that is my big goal. This is my big goal with the Untamed Hero merch specifically. um, and then we'll be adding more stuff there, and it's really been really nice to have people who've ordered stuff, and yeah, we'll be adding more stuff, and it is really a kind of a fun adventure with that. um, and then I also have an ebook that's coming, that's more a little bit in depth, and then some point, which, on the to-do list of million things, I want to write a book, which I'm sure you can relate to this. Like, as you've gone through something, like I didn't go to college to be a writer, or I didn't go to college to be a podcaster, or all these things. We're just kind of figuring it out, and so I would love to do that as.
We're mission, I have a mentor coach that they say is a mission driven leader, right? So you're mission driven. And I think shout out to those of us who have been through a really hard thing, right? I think people think, oh, look at these people trying to monetize from their hardship. And you're like, nobody's monetizing. I mean, maybe we can monetize enough to reignite the mission, which the mission is to help people like us in scenarios where we didn't have. And I had a really cool podcast guest yesterday who was like, her goal in life, her legacy in life was, she's like, I just want, at the end of my life, if I have children, for my children, if they go through the same scenario that I went through, that maybe 2 notches in the scheme of life, I've made this world a better place, that they can grieve in a better way. And I was thinking to myself, yes, amen to that. And yes, single moms who've been through a lot, who are working on themselves and trying to stay working out and resourced and raise their children and make enough money to breadwin and to give back. Like, you should be propping yourself up so hard. It's amazing. And it doesn't always all work. It's not easy. Podcasting is very, so rewarding, so hard.
To dedicate yourself to something to help others, it's not a bad thing to earn income from something that I'm giving full time to, but that is not my goal with the Untamed Hero. It's not where I grew it. Um, I wish I had a way of, I wish I was a billionaire. I would freaking go and find all the single moms and give them back now. I wouldn't have to, do it. And also, and maybe you can relate to this as well, is like, I didn't, there's something else I could have been. I have a big account about, put him in fashion blogger or something else. It definitely wasn't a survivor of narcissistic abuse. So it's, and I think as women specifically, it's like attention or things that, trust me, like that was not what I would have chosen. The attention.
You're like, I don't need it. Right, exactly. And I also think it's okay, Well, I'm working on this, like, Mel Robbins thoughts of, like, let them think what they want to think about us. The truth is, in your situation and my situation, when we were at the pits of hell, I know that I could only have gotten help from experts in the areas of what I was experiencing. And there is no better expert in domestic violence than someone who survived leaving a domestic violence situation. And there's no better person to help a griever than someone who's grieved, who's walked the same path. So, I don't, you can study grief all day long, and I do, and you study domestic violence and narcissistic abuse as much as you possibly can, but there's nothing that can put you in the hot seat of the person that experienced it, so you can witness and be there for them. So it's really amazing. It's really powerful. And the fact that you're balancing so much, I commend you. I have been a single mom. It was the most challenging time in my nervous system. I mean, I thought walking the death walk was the hardest part. And I was like, it cannot possibly get any worse. Well, it did. Single momming in the pandemic as a business owner with 2 small grieving children was the hardest time of my life. And I failed fantastically. I really did. It was really.
And that's what makes you such a powerful helper now to others, you know. And it's like, yeah, we wish we didn't have those things, but like you've gone through so many nuances there.
Well, I love your raw honesty, and I hope to match it, because the truth is, like, to the listeners out there suffering and surviving from whatever hardship and whatever loss and grief that they're going through, it's not gonna you're not gonna heal in a linear line. And this is a lot about what Kat is working on in Untamed Heroes. Is this isn't linear healing. It's not perfect. You're not going to be able to do all the things well. It's not an Instagram post, you know, it's not a perfect story. We can't edit out the pain that we experience and the hardship that we have to and what we got to climb through to get on the other side of this. But what she's saying is mindset has been a big thing for her, and she's choosing life, as am I. And I think it doesn't always look pretty, and it's still hard, and we're not monetizing it very well over here, but we are reaching people because we're honest. And the truth is it's hard, and you're doing great. And I'm so impressed with your story. And I think that if you had some listeners today that might be suffering from a situation that was similar to yours and are still in it and looking for ways out, talk to me about, you know, what would you say to them? What do you want to say to the listener who might need to escape a domestic violence scenario?
You should escape. That's number one. And I'm not saying that you need to do it like I did it or somebody else did it, but find a way. And I know, listen, like I think the biggest thing is that you feel so stuck because you also start thinking of 5,000 things that you would have to think, right? I have to move and I have to do this, that, 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 and the list just goes on and on. Which, yes, there is a shitload of stuff, but you don't have to do it all at once. Number one, you need to get to safety. So it's kind of like, I think the escaping and the getting onto this healing journey in general is about one step at a time. What is the next best step I can do and take it? And find help. Now there's also online, you know, a lot of resources. Get somebody to help you. You don't have to do it alone. You're not alone in it. And you know what? Something that I've done on Untamed Hero as well is like either if it's people that I know, like my friends, or somebody messages me, I put a community question out there and people answer. So something specific to that. You, if you're, you know, in this situation and you have kids, because like you said before, the best are the survivors because they know exactly what to do in these situations. But I would just say also, you know, but if you make a plan, if you can, but if you can't and you need to save your life and or your kids and your animals, then you need to just get out and you'll figure rest out later. Don't try to figure everything out, because sometimes what happens, and I've seen that happen a lot, is also that we start thinking there's so much to do, and then we're finding these, I don't want to say excuses in a bad way, but excuses of why we're not doing it, because it is hard. It's freaking hard to leave. It's so hard. It's so hard to just make that decision. But then we start making this, I'm going to wait till this moment or that, and it never ends. And it's just, and then you're getting worse. And it's because, you know, this relationship is going downhill more and more and more. It will never get better. So the sooner the better, and get some help. But if you have time to plan, you know, evidence, get evidence as much as possible, whatever that means for you as far as being safe. Write things down, record it, send it to your friends. So the way I was doing it before, when I mentioned, is that I had recorded it. This was on a whim, right? So I recorded it, then I sent it immediately. I sent it to my friend, and then some of them I put on, and I had them. Yes, so I had them uploaded to like a private YouTube thing because I needed to get it out of my phone, because if he finds it, I'm screwed, right? If you're able to, I don't know, buy some gift cards for yourself when you go to the grocery store, save up money if you can, if you have it. Um, but again, there's many things, and I have actually a free checklist on that you can go through. You can get it from the bio that kind of helps with those things. Don't let these things hold you back. Don't also get stuck in them, because it doesn't freaking matter. You know, at the end of the day, it's you and your life and your kids, or your pet's life, and you can get out. And it's not going to be easy, but you absolutely can do this one step at a time. I mean, honestly, there's no magic potion, but you can do it. And you can send me a message. I can find you like attorneys or anybody like online. I know, but I have a bunch of really great like therapists and other people across US, but most of the followers are from US. But we can find you people. Like you can do it. Um, I know how scary it is.
Well, you guys heard it from her, and this is like so powerful. We will, on the show notes, if you're listening to this show and you're in a domestic violence situation or know someone who needs help, we will have lots of resources. Untamed Heroes and following Kat is a really good place to create community if you need one with questions. She says that she has resources and can help you. So reach out to her. Feel free to DM us, and we're happy to connect you guys. And so I guess what I want to end is, because the somatic practitioner in me always likes to end on a good nervous system energy, not a bad one for our listeners and for ourselves. Tell the listeners out there, who hopefully are the same people we were just speaking to, what does it feel like to live life unafraid?
Safe enough. It is really empowering. Um, and I think that there's also, you always have some fear, it doesn't go away. But like I said before, you just learn to manage it better. But it really gives you, when you go through something really difficult, it really changes your perspective of life. And it is so empowering. So listen, we have stuff that happens, or you're worried about the bills, or you're worried about something. And then I'm like, are you kidding me? I escaped this idiot. I can do this. I can talk to this crazy person at, across the counter, or you know what I mean? Like all these things that we go daily basis. I'm like, what? Like none of this, it matters, but it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like you're given the second chance in life, and you really nail in on what's important, and you get to you get to be this not people pleaser anymore. You get to really hone in on like your peace, and you have new, and listen, you lose a lot of people when you go through something hard, which is insane, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Okay, you lose a lot of freaking people who you never thought you would lose. And then you're going to start building, could be super slow, but you're going to get these amazing people around you who are real people that need to be in your life. And literally your whole life changed. And then you're going to look back and you're like, you don't even recognize that anymore of what you went through. So it just is such a empowering thing. And it's not, and I also want to say that it's not like rainbows and sunshines all the time, like you said as well, but it's possible for everybody. There's no, I am not, I don't, I'm not, any more special than you are, anybody, somebody else is. Like we can do it, and we are stronger together. I mean, I know it's like this catchphrase, but it's so true. So you'll find your community, you'll find your power, and you'll find that you'll start doing things, what I would say, that you really care about, and it changes your life, and it feels so freaking good. And I think that that is the best revenge, because these people will forever live with themselves. They're never changing, or whatever. That is the best revenge, is that you being like, you get to experience joy, love, happiness, fun, you, even the scary moments, but you have the tools to combat it, and you get to experience the life like that.
Well, there's no better ending than that. So choosing your life and taking good care and loving yourself and resourcing and taking back your power is the best revenge when you're coming out of a domestic violence situation. And I think it's the same answer for any of my grievers listening too, right? This is a lot of grief to go through a domestic violence situation. They deal with so much loss and fear on top of it. And so really, it's such a testament to your spirit. And I am so grateful for the time today, Kat. And we are going to be just promoting, buy some merch from Untamed Heroes. I'm hoping to help people get resourced. If you're in the San Antonio or Texas area, I highly recommend checking out the Transformation House. That's a personal connection that I'm obsessed with. They're doing such beautiful work over there. The women who are leading that organization are working night and day to resource. And so hit us up if you need resources to get away from your domestic violence situation. I hope that you're able to listen to this podcast and look at Kat as a beaming light of hope, because that's what we all need, is that in our hardship that we're able to resource ourselves, love ourselves, and choose to live in the way that's meaningful to us, that's safe. And so building safety and connection in a new way. So thank you so much, Kat. I really appreciate your time.
If you enjoyed this episode of Wake the F Up, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join the Wake community by downloading our app. Just search for The Wake Wellness in the Apple or Android App Store. and follow us on Instagram at The Wake Wellness. Thanks for listening.